The life and adventures of Santa Claus is a fun idea, and the narrative was quite fascinating, but I didn't really enjoy it very much. But that being said, I am kind of curious to read the book. This adaptation was released in 1985, directed by Arthur Rankin Jr. and Jules, and I'm a big fan of their work, particularly their Christmas themed films. So I was really looking forward to it. And it's based on the story by L. Frank Baum, and the concept, as I said, is really good. And the stop motion is really nice to look at. It's the usual quality we expect from those directors. But I just found that I didn't care for pretty much any character apart from Santa Claus. And this tells the story of baby Santa Claus, which is the cutest thing ever, and how he grew up as this boy called Claus, and he was mortal. And these characters gathered together in the forest and they have the ability to grant immortality, and they start to explain why Claus deserves immortality. And it's kind of addressing something that I never considered before. How is Santa so old? How has he lived for so long? I don't think it's a question that I ever considered as a child. Maybe I did, but I was, more concerned with how does he get down the chimney and how does he deliver all of the presents in one night. I don't think I ever questioned how is he so old. But this one helps to kind of answer that and show that actually maybe they could find a way to make him immortal and persuade people to make him immortal. And it's basically the origin story of Santa, but with a very unique take. And as I said, it's a really fascinating concept, and there were some bits that I quite liked. As a whole, I found the narrative to be not to my liking. It's not, I don't care for this kind of fantasy. Christmas fantasy, yes, but this isn't a very Christmassy film, if that makes sense. Traditionally Christmassy film. So for me, I didn't find it that appealing, but every now and then, for example, when Claus ages up a little bit, for example, when we see him as a baby, it's the cutest thing ever. Seeing him as a young boy, that was fascinating. But, the intricacies of the narrative I wasn't that bothered about. But if you like this kind of fantasy story, then I think it might actually really appeal. And as I said, I am potentially curious to read the book, partly to see how it compares, but also because I find that it's just easier to become immersed in a story when you're reading a book than it is with a film, and maybe I'd like it a little bit more as a narrative. But either way, I think it was a really interesting concept. The storytelling was good, the pacing was good. It's just under an hour. It's not tremendously long. It's borderline feature length. And the character of Claus was really likable, which I feel like that's really important, because if he's not very likable, well, nobody wants to dislike Santa Claus. It is very different. It's easily the most unique story of Santa Claus I've ever seen, to its credit, and it did raise some interesting points. As I said, as a whole, I didn't love it, but that's down to my personal tastes and the kinds of stories or genres that I like. But the stop motion was very good. Claus was an interesting character. It did give me some food for thought. So if you have an hour, less than an hour to spare, and you're interested in a story that's definitely very creative, I'd say it's worth checking out. If you've ever read the book by L. Frank Baum, I'd love to know what you think of it, maybe how it compares. I say I'll read it. I'll put it on my list. I'll get to it eventually, maybe. I'm not in a hurry to read it, but I think it could be quite a fascinating read, particularly if it's quite a short book and not something that's too much of a commitment. I'll see. Time will tell. But for now, I'm happy to have seen it. I may not have loved every second of it, but I can appreciate the quality of the creativity, of the stop motion, and the uniqueness of the narrative. It's certainly something a little bit different and maybe worth watching once.